Chapter 1. The Beginning of a Storm. I never thought a simple tractor could spark a war. But then again, I never imagined people like the HOA board could be so ruthless. The morning it all started, I was in the barn, checking the oil on my dad's old John Deere. The smell of fresh soil filled the air, and the sunrise cast long golden streaks across the cornfields. It should have been a peaceful morning. Instead, it turned into the beginning of the fight of my life. That was the day Karen Monroe, the self-important HOA president, stormed onto my land, screaming about community standards and property values. She pointed at my father's tractor like it was some kind of plague. "That thing needs to go," she snapped. I wiped my hands on my jeans, staring at her like she'd lost her mind. "This is private property. That tractor isn't going anywhere." Karen smirked, holding up a thick packet of documents. "Oh, but it is. Your property has been redistricted into the HOA's jurisdiction. You now fall under our regulations. And according to our new bylaws, agricultural equipment must be stored out of sight. You have 72 hours to comply, or we start issuing fines." I felt my fist clench. This farm had been in my family for generations. My father had built this land with his bare hands, and that tractor was his pride and joy. It wasn't just machinery, it was a legacy. "That's not going to happen," I said firmly. "I'm not part of your HOA. I never signed anything." She grinned, the kind of smile a predator gives just before going for the throat. "Oh, but you are now. We passed a vote last month. Your land is part of our HOA territory. It's all perfectly legal." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You can't just take my land and force me into your rules." Karen adjusted her sunglasses as if she was enjoying this. "Check the county records. And while you're at it, start shopping for a storage shed. Because if that tractor is still visible in 72 hours, the fines start at $500 per day." And with that, she turned and marched off, her heels sinking into my dirt driveway. I watched her leave, my blood boiling. She had no idea who she was messing with. This was war. Chapter 2. The First Shot Fired. The next morning, I woke up to find a bright red sign staked into my front yard. "Notice of violation, non-compliant property," is read in bold, capitalized letters. Beneath it, a list of offenses, with my tractor's visibility at the very top. Karen and her HOA minions wasted no time. I yanked the sign out of the ground and tossed it aside, muttering curses under my breath. My dog, Duke, trotted over, sniffing the sign before looking up at me as if to say, "What now, boss?" "Now," I said, patting Duke's head. "Now, we fight back." I spent the morning at the county clerk's office, poring through property records. As Karen had smugly pointed out, my land had indeed been redistricted into the HOA's jurisdiction, but something about it didn't sit right. The signatures on the petition didn't match up with any names I recognized. In fact, many of them were names I'd never seen before. Fraud. I snapped pictures of the documents, gathering as much evidence as I could. If the HOA thought they could bulldoze over me and my family's legacy, they had another thing coming. Chapter 3. Gathering the Troops. That evening, I called a meeting at Joe's Diner, the one place in town where the real residents gathered. The people who'd lived here long before the HOA moved in with their shiny new subdivisions and their artificial laws. 15 farmers, ranchers, and old-timers showed up, all of them just as fed up as I was. "They're trying to strangle us out," Old Man Harris said, slamming his mug of coffee onto the table. "First, it was those parking restrictions, then the fence height rules. Now, they're coming for our farms." "We can't let them do this," I said, pulling out my phone. "I found proof of fraud in the redistricting process. If we push this to the county, we might have a chance to get our land back." A murmur of agreement spread through the diner. "Count me in," Jim Dawson said. "They hit me with a fine last week for keeping my feed barrels too close to the road. Next thing you know, they'll be charging us for having dirt on our boots." A few others nodded, fists clenched, faces set in determination. "All right," I said. "We go at this the right way. We gather signatures, get legal backing, and take this to the county commissioner. We're not just fighting for our land, we're fighting for our way of life." The battle had officially begun. Chapter 4. The Legal Battle. Over the next few weeks, our fight against the HOA turned into a full-blown war. With the evidence of fraud in our hands, we filed an official complaint with the county commissioner. But Karen and her HOA cronies weren't going to back down so easily. First, they tried to discredit us. Suddenly, articles appeared in the local newspaper about disruptive farmers and declining neighborhood appeal. They pushed their narrative hard, hoping to sway public opinion against us. But they underestimated just how much support we had. Farmers from surrounding towns joined our cause, and before long, even non-farmers were standing by our side. We weren't just fighting for our land. We were standing up against corruption. Then came the lawsuits. The HOA tried to drown us in legal paperwork, hoping to wear us down. But thanks to a local attorney, Sarah Dawson, who had seen firsthand how the HOA had harassed her father, we held our ground. "They want to intimidate you," Sarah said one night as we prepped for the hearing. "But they don't have a legal leg to stand on. We've got them cornered." Chapter 5. The Courtroom Showdown. On the day of the county hearing, the courthouse was packed. Farmers, residents, and reporters filled every seat. Karen sat smugly at the front, her expensive lawyer flipping through a thick folder of documents. But when our turn came, Sarah presented undeniable proof of fraud. Fake signatures, backdoor deals, and even emails between HOA board members discussing how to force us off our land. The room went silent as the county commissioner studied the evidence. Then, with a firm voice, he ruled in our favor. The HOA has no legal jurisdiction over these properties. The fraudulent rezoning is hereby nullified, and all associated fines are dismissed. Cheers erupted in the courtroom. Karen's face turned an impressive shade of red as she stormed out, her carefully constructed empire crumbling around her. Chapter 6. The Aftermath. With the HOA's grip broken, we wasted no time reclaiming our land. The ridiculous fines were refunded, and the fraudulent bylaws were wiped clean. But we didn't stop there. We pushed for new county legislation protecting independent landowners from HOA overreach. Thanks to our fight, laws were passed ensuring no HOA could ever absorb private farmland without explicit consent. Karen? She tried to save face, but after the scandal, she resigned in disgrace. Last we heard, she moved to another state, where she was no doubt scheming her next power grab. As for us, the farm was safe. The tractor that started it all still sat in my field, a symbol of resilience, a reminder that standing up for what's right is always worth the fight. One evening, as the sun set over our reclaimed land, Jim Dawson walked over with a satisfied grin on his face. "You did it, kid. Your dad would be proud." I looked out at the fields, at the land my father had worked so hard to build. "We did it," I corrected him. "And we made sure no one else has to fight this fight again. The war was over. And we won."